Welcome to the Paru Zings, Appraisers on Purpose podcast. This podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? And what do they do now for their teams, their clients, and the industry? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Welcome back. We appreciate the opportunity to once again hear from another one of our really experienced peers about their life, their path along the yellow brick road of real estate valuation and appraisal. And more importantly, just what may seem unattainable to some really is just a matter of patience, pursuit, and persistence around continuing to grow and develop one's abilities. So welcome back to the Perusings podcast. This session, we are excited to have Tim O'Brien. Some of you may know Tim. Many of you may not. Tim, a very low-profile individual. I appreciate his thoughtful and generous willingness to join us and just share a little bit about his life and how he's gotten through the number of experiences he's had so that we can all just, become a little wiser, a little more informed about what's available in the profession and how many opportunities there really are. So Tim, welcome.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, Tim, we always like to start out with the powerful question. So were you born this way, or how did you get into the appraisal profession?
I was always born attractive. No, just joking. I was a very cute baby, as my mother. No.
Thank goodness. Does any mother really ever say, gosh, my kid is so ugly. Can I swap him for another one? I mean, do you ever hear those words?
They're fun to hang out with, those mothers. They'll have a free flow of comments on the world, but no, I don't think it's too much. So, yes, born into it, but with a caveat. Born into it with a ban about not being an appraiser.
Wow, fascinating. Tell us more.
Yeah, my dad, he passed away a couple of years ago, but was an appraiser. He was in the military, came back after serving in Vietnam, came back, got his real estate appraiser license, was a real estate appraiser at the assessor's office in Minnesota. And there'll be some overlap of some people that Alan Hummel, that I know you've had on the podcast, and my dad know as well. Minnesota is, one of the breeding grounds of appraisers, primarily because Norwest Mortgage was there back in the day, and then became, Norwest bought Wells Fargo, and that's all history and then my dad kind of progressed through his career, loved being an appraiser, hated being a salesperson, hated talking in front of people, was a big introvert, but loved, just the analytical aspects of being an appraiser, and progressed through his career in a variety of things, and, was very clear, since we were very young, you're not to be an appraiser. You kids go do anything you want. and I don't think it was because he just liked the profession. He just wanted to provide a better, life for his kids.
Yes.
In terms of that, several of my brothers and sisters graduated college, 4-year degrees. My mom never did that. So that, those were stepping stones. As a generational approach, you want your kids to exceed what you've done.
Yes.
Of course, by 5-year-old, then I'm told I can't be an appraiser. And what am I doing? I'm in MLS books with my dad. And, you think about that and you're like, does that mean you wanted to be an appraiser? No, it means I wanted to do something with my dad.
Absolutely. You didn't know what the MLS book was. It was just whatever dad did. So you just follow along with him.
Yeah, we looked at the picture. I looked at the pictures in the MLS book because you fall asleep to my dad's manual typewriter, typing the old appraisal forms and going through there. And then after a while, it would be like, hey, Dad, I found this comp for you as you get older, 7, 8. And again, I didn't care about appraisal at all. I cared that I was doing something with my dad.
I love that.
And I didn't realize that back then. It was just something to do. But now when you look back on it, it's like, why was I doing that? Well, I was doing that because my dad worked weird hours.
Mm-hmm.
He provided for our family. We didn't grow up rich. We were poor growing up. My mom's a nurse. My dad was an appraiser. Went through the busy times and the slow times as anybody does in this industry. But, I just started doing that. And then by the time I was 16, we were very clear, pick out a college, you're not going to be an appraiser. So I wanted to be a doctor.
Oh, okay.
And I did my undergrad. I was pre-med, and I have an undergrad degree in clinical microbiology.
Oh my gosh. So we're basically going to watch you be one of those fancy startups with like Biogen or something, right?
No, I'm really too tired. I just like to sit around and watch it snow now. So I was going to be a doctor, wanted to be a trauma surgeon.
Wow.
I did all of the stuff for undergrad. I did my 4-year degree. I focused in epidemiology projects. I did some stuff with the CDC in my undergrad, did all DNA, RNA, all the stuff that just couldn't tell you anything about anymore. Graduated, and I just decided I didn't want to be a doctor. And part of the reason I did is when I was going through undergrad, I worked in a hospital, and I listened and saw to all the complaints doctors had. boy, I hate working with insurance companies. I hate doing all these things and I can't actually treat the patients. And after a while, you learn and saw all this bitterness. Not that all doctors are bitter, don't get me wrong. But my view of what being a doctor was going to be was not what I was going to be able to be. So then I took the natural step beyond that of, after that, what do I fall back to? Well, I start studying international management. Again, right on the appraisal track, right?
Of course, I mean, that's exactly what you're going to do after you've studied DNA and RNA is we're going to go to international management. We're going to figure out what's wrong with those leaders.
So I have an MBA in international management.
Wow.
Which means that, you can speak foreign language, you can negotiate, you can learn cultural differences and applications, et cetera, et cetera. You can do all of these things. Hangs right on the wall, full of other, things that I've got there. While doing that, it was one of the big surges in appraisal. And I said, if I just did this on the weekend and a couple days, I could probably get enough to put stuff together to pay for my tuition. Mm-hmm. Maybe even puts towards, a down payment on a house.
Wow.
I talked to my dad, and I've got a degree hung already. So at this point, I'm going to be an appraiser, right? Look at my kid, the scientist. Well, if he wants to go take some classes and follow me around and help me, then great. So he bought into this, and he let me intern with him. I always said that I had one of the hardest internships because if I did something wrong, my supervisor will just come crack me right upside the head. Literally, I had legally nothing I could do about it. You go through all this, and long story short, I ended up making enough money for the first down payment on my house. It was like $23,000 over 2 years.
Congratulations.
I was able to sock away. Yep. And it wasn't a lot. Houses didn't cost in Minnesota back then what they do now, but it was just that entry-level townhome, nothing fancy, nothing. I was doing, and then I looked at it and go, boy, if I did this full-time, boy, this would be awesome. But at the same point, then I'm getting the screws turned to me a little bit because now I'm on the appraiser path. And I worked with my dad for a bit. And the way I was able to convince him to let me stay is we worked together. We rode together. We went to properties together. Again, doing something with my dad. Again, it's a common theme that I'll have kind of going through here is doing things with family. But long story short, my dad then became a staff appraiser as he got older. And I was a little worried that my dad, as nice of a man and as smartest appraiser as he was a real good businessman. So I decided after a couple of years that, well, maybe I should manage some staff appraisers because I've got some background in management. And that kind of started my foray into the appraisal industry outside of field appraising. I actually went into a corporate gig and I managed a group of about 35 staff appraisers in Minnesota. Some that I still stay in contact with today, all good individuals. It was a very stable, solid team. Had a very large lending client that was stable. And then I just kind of progressed through that company doing a variety of things. And my last role in that company was actually working with the Appraisal Institute and other coalitions of appraisers to help pass the legislation that legislated and regulated appraisal management companies. So I would actually fly state to state, sometimes in opposition, sometimes in support of, sometimes working to find a negotiated settlement with the AI, with appraisers on the ground, with banks, with AMCs, et cetera. So I think I went through and did something like I was part of, at some degree, 20 to 25 pieces of legislation. And again, it very weird bedfellows at sometimes. At some points, I was there testifying with folks that didn't share the majority of things that I had, but they couldn't get it through the legislature. In other instances, I was going against stuff because people were trying to put in legislation that was harmful to the industry. And I'll give you an example. The state of Nevada at one point in time tried to outlaw all AMCs.
Oh.
So every fee appraiser right now is going, Nevada. And what they would replace it with is one state-run AMC. The state would dole out assignments at fees and conditions they determined through their process. Now, this never made it out of draft legislation, so we never know how it would have actually worked. But getting, and people think about that and imagine that for a minute is, would you want your state regulatory official body, whoever, maybe it's a new entity. And in our industry, our state workers work really hard, but I would say that their pay is not commensurate with the hard work that they do. That's part of the state world. And would you want all of your assignments to be beholden on that?
Fascinating.
That's a tough scenario. So I was able to play around in that space for a bit. Then I'm going to kind of fast track a little bit here just because I know we want to talk about stuff in the industry now.
I got to tell you, Tim, this stuff's fascinating because this is the type of insight that people don't know. I mean, all these things are going on. They don't have awareness of it. And because of your role, having been through, it sounded like, and correct me if I'm wrong, while you were getting your MBA, you were doing an internship, which is quite common. Yours just didn't happen to be in any field related to international management. I mean, unless you were speaking maybe Spanish or French with your appraisers? Nope.
Wasn't doing any of that completely. I did the MBA at night. It was night classes. It was before distance learning or anything like that. It was in person. So I would work during the day.
Yes.
Appraise houses during the day, and then I would go from 5 to 9 was the classes at night. And I get what you're saying on that. I don't like to talk just a ton about all the things I've done. I'd rather talk about where we're at as an industry and what I've learned, all that. But I'll kind of find a middle ground.
Yeah, no, thanks.
After that, and this is another theme of my, career that I've seen, is I'm always curious about what's behind the curtain one level up. So, I worked at an appraisal management company for a while. And as I progressed, you found things as you got up higher into the management structure. And you always wondered, and people would say, hey, well, that's the lender determines that. The lender determines that. So I'm just like, all right, well, I'm going to work for a lender then. Everybody says that the next level of the curtain is, so I went and worked for the largest lender in the country, Wells Fargo.
Got it. Okay.
So I spent a couple of years at Wells because I wanted to see what was behind the curtain, right? How does all of this work and get made? And, because at an AMC level, you're kind of trickle down,
yes.
Right? You've got trickle down from the GSEs, the lenders, everything that's there. So work me up a curtain. So I wanted to see it. So my job was to help with valuation strategy, help manage our AMC partners, onboard new AMC partners if necessary, or direct panel, work with technology teams, et cetera. It was a lot of interesting fun. But again, now I move a curtain and I find out that, the largest bank in the world essentially runs on a DOS-based system. And that's 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago.
Fascinating. Not surprising, though. Not surprising. Legacy systems are prevalent around the world.
But if you think about the market capitalization of like Wells Fargo or other companies, you think they've got to have like the up-to-date computers and technology. And the first time I saw how a file was being underwritten or processed, it literally reminded me of the first time I had seen DOS. And some of your users right now, probably the younger ones listening, are going, what's DOS? Go to Google. Google, tell me what's DOS? And still a lot of banks run on that today. That's why you see some companies trying to get in and replace, whether it was, some of the technology. So long story short, I'm in there for a while and I peel back the curtain a little bit and I'm like, oh, okay. So then I decided I wanted to maybe go and explore the chief appraiser space a little bit because I missed appraising. So I did go back into the AMC world for a bit and was chief appraiser. Managed a team of reviewers, exceptional reviewers, in my opinion, that were very, very good. Plugged in with, we broke them up into regional areas. So you wouldn't have someone in California typically reviewing something in New York, as an example, or what have you. You tried to keep those folks there. And stayed with that for a while. And then I was offered an opportunity after a sabbatical that I took to run. And that's how I got out here to Reno, Nevada, where I live now. I spent a couple of years running an AMC. And again, started to pull some curtains back. Sometimes there was stuff that was there that was, oh, that's really cool. That's really awesome how that's being done. Great. Sometimes you pull a curtain back, there's nothing back there at all. And then sometimes you're like, oh, God, there's some ugly process back there. So up to the last couple of years, that's kind of been my path. But the most important part of my career is last 4 years. And that's what we started our family.
Oh my, of course that's the most important part. That's the only thing that really matters.
Yeah, so I should say, because my little girl can hear me in the other room, she's always struck today. 6 years ago, because she's 6.5. And we actually tried for a little before then, but we were told we probably couldn't have kids. So our miracle baby, Claire, showed up 6.5 years ago and changed my perspective on everything. Everything that was important wasn't as important anymore, but I screwed up. I still put work in front of family.
You're not alone on that one. Goodness.
And I talked to some of my mentors before, and they gave me some advice, and I think it's good advice, but it needed to have an asterisk behind it. They said, if you're going to really work yourself to the bone, do it in the first 3 to 5 years because your kids won't remember anyways, which is true. You ask Claire where I was, during their second year of her life, she won't remember. But you know who does? My wife.
Oh, yeah, your significant other.
You cause damage. in relationships that way. So at the end of the day, what I'm most proud of all of my life accomplishments, I know you don't have video with your group here right now, but we're just doing audio. You can see in my office, I have a little corner of appraisal stuff, and I have kid drawing. I have a Valentine for my little girl right there in the back. I have all this kid stuff here So we have 3 kids now. We're not having any more. I promise you that. They have completely changed the focus of my life, which is why if anybody looks me up on LinkedIn, I'm a full-time dad, part-time appraiser.
I think that is such a wonderful testament to, why we're here. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, most people are not born into an existence to be like, oh my gosh, you need to go be appraisal with your life. That's the whole thing. You need to go, work yourself to the bone. It is be here, contribute, be in hopefully a relationship that's fulfilling and meaningful, and that you're blessed with the opportunity to either have your own or maybe adopt and raise or even just mentor kids or others so that you live a life of value and meaning. And it's so encouraging to hear you talk about that, Tim. I am thrilled, and I'm glad, more importantly, I hope your daughter quickly gets over strep throat. But in the meantime, if she can't hear us, because we're in headsets, but if she could, she would be able to receive that acknowledgement of what an amazing choice of an intentional choice of, appraisal or some form of work, but more importantly, family and getting the priorities right.
Yeah. And again, everybody can have different priorities. It's super clear that my priorities may not be best for you, for others. But what I would say is, if I could leave any nuggets of wisdom on this with folks, is make sure you identify the things that are most important in your life. And if you're going to go work for a company, make sure you ask about them in the interview process. I wish I would have asked at my last job about what's the issue with paternity leave. I wanted with my last kid, I wanted to take 4 to 6 weeks off. I got 3 days.
Ooh.
And I got pressured on that.
Jeez.
And it's like, it's one of the things where there's a balance. I think that a lot of people want to do the right thing, but as you progress in your career and as you move up the ladder, people expect different things of you. But at the end of the day, when we had our last little girl, I wanted to make sure I was there for my wife, my family, and everything else. And I didn't feel I could get that. And I knew at that exact moment I was done. So for me now, I run my own little boutique appraisal shop, just me and my intern of training, we call them interns here in Nevada. But that's kind of been the 30-second snapshot of my life that went, a lot longer than 30 seconds.
That's absolutely fantastic. And what a great punctuation. And that you, whatever you've done to take the steps to be in a place that you and your family are able to allow you, as you said, full-time dad and part-time appraiser. And that means different things to different people, but it highlights priority. I can't say that's been something that's always come up in previous podcasts, but I have to say it is touching and it's inspiring. And hopefully for even just a few that get an opportunity to listen to this, they see that maybe there's choices they can start making if they haven't been, or choices they can increase in if they've started, that can also come to a place that you've gotten to for themselves, their lives, and their future, and their family.
And it's one of those things where I think you need a shock sometimes personally to really see it and feel it, opposed to who's this guy in, Nevada, like, 911 is filmed, right? Crazy guy in the mountains talking about his life, but I'll tell you the shock that happened to me. And I think people can maybe relate to it. I had a very good friend going back to when I managed staff appraisers. His name was Reese, one of the smartest appraisers I ever met. He was a member of the Institute. He was an SRA. He just did residential work. It wasn't commercial, but he was highly intelligent. Also one of the most qualified, take anything, great appraisers, great dad out there. Only thing I had against him was he was from Wisconsin. That's a Minnesota, Wisconsin. The Minnesota-Wisconsin joke, tough. But even that I could get by. So Reese had 3 little girls, and they're all pro women now. My shock when I started really starting to see the world in a different way is Reese's little girl was getting married on a Saturday, and he died Friday morning on the golf course. And you think about that, Reese is a hell of a man, raised a great family. Would I say I was absolutely close with the rest of his family other than Reese? No. I knew them. I knew his wife. We'd met on social. I hadn't met his daughters or anything other than on Facebook. But at the end of the day, when you look back on it, I looked at and I said, all the things Reese did that was great. He was still excited when the $2 quarter pounder with cheese is came. two for $1 at McDonald's. He's a bigger guy. And then you start to look at it and you go, as an appraiser, am I taking care of myself? Am I taking care of my family? Am I spending all the time? That being said, Reese, I believe, had a really great life. He loved his life. He loved the Green Bay Packers. He loved all the things that he had in life. And at the end of the day, you just think about it. You look, how would my family, how would put all this together that you're working towards? It could be taken away from you in an instant. And that's, when I started to look at the world a bit different, and, it all kind of added on at that point, whether it was with our family and, the stresses of the work and other things that are there. But again, people should really identify, want to get into this industry, want to survive in this industry, want to exceed in this industry. Make sure you know what the most important things are. You want to be rich? Okay, that's great. You want to be rich. Can you take it with you? You can make a coffin out of money if you want. But, there's that. You want to have a large family. You want to have church life, social life, whatever it is. Make sure you make that list, and then don't procrastinate on that list. Look at it every day. Look at it every week, whatever it is. Find out and do that. So that's the reason I drive a minivan right now. That's the reason I coach T-ball and do all those things that, and I don't do as much appraisal work. And self-admittedly, even before the slowdown happened, I was already starting to taper off and pare down my clients, just because, hey, the most important things on Monday and Wednesdays are not finals and writing reports. It's T-ball.
Jim, I absolutely love that. That is spectacular. How, so you mentioned your oldest is what, 6.5? You got 3, and then you've got the second and the third. Where are they in the mix?
So my boy's the middle. He's 5.5. We went from not being able to have kids to they were literally just falling out of the sky.
And then busy delivering.
Exactly. And then I have a very precarious 3-year-old who is one of the bosses of the family. Let's just say that. We had her conference the other day at school, and we were just talking about it, that she's a little shy sometimes, but she has no problem singing at the top of her lungs about nothing in particular for hours on end. And she is incredibly intelligent, but she's also the kid that I tell my oldest, I was like, you make sure and save your money, because that's the one you're going to have to bail out.
What wisdom? She has no idea what you're talking about, but what wisdom?
Nope. She can still write it down. So no, we are very blessed to have a very healthy, stable family. I've spent the last couple of years kind of under the radar. I still do a few things here. I'm currently the president of the Commission of Appraisers of Real Estate in the state of Nevada, but I'm not really on the speaking circuit anymore. I'm not on the conference circuit anymore. You're the first podcast / public interview I've probably done in 2.5 years.
Oh, we appreciate
so
that.
I'm, slowly kind of crawling back out into the world, because all the kids go to school now full time. And then I'd say that, and then the first day, we schedule it for I got a kid home. But I've just been, I love listening. I've listened to the vast majority of your podcasts already, Alan, Heather. And so some of those folks I've known or met. Heather I met at USPAP instructor training. Alan I've known for probably 20 some odd years. And then, other people like Woody Fincham I hadn't met before, but a lot of insight I gained from that particular podcast. So it's a lot of fun listening to the folks that you've had on so far. I think I'm behind a couple episodes. John Brennan, I know, had one posted that I haven't had a chance to listen to, but seems like you're getting a really good cross-section of the industry, and hope to see some more interesting folks, a lot more interesting than me, hopefully, on future podcasts.
Well, first of all, thank you, Tim. And second, the real key to each and every one of the people that we reach out and invite to be part of this is less about, personally, and you know this, we chat with everyone right before we hop on, and that is, I don't really care about what you're doing in the industry right now. What's more important when we look at paying it forward is, how did you get, what was your yellow brick road from where you started from in microbiology to where you're at now, which is full-time dad, part-time appraiser? And then what were those experiences that you gained along the way? Like, hey, this was really informative. Oh my gosh, I wish I would have learned that earlier. It was like a big, warning sign, whatever it might be, so that others who they may not have that privilege of having maybe a Reese that they get to work with and really admire can maybe glean something out of these sessions. And be like, okay, maybe I have a mentor. I don't have that kind of mentor, but this could kind of serve in that absence. And we intentionally look for people that have had big impact in the industry over a period of time, because, people don't wake up and say, oh my goodness, I know I'm going to be, president of the United States or president of the of a coalition, or I'm going to be the whatever. But every once in a while, you do get to talk to people that go, as you pointed out, a little bit, maybe one level up or a couple more levels up. How did they get to that point? And then what can the rest of us learn that may help us make better decisions for ourselves, our family, and our professional development? So very much appreciate you accepting the invitation, Tim, and just excited to hear more about it.
Well, and just excuse me, there a couple people that I did suggest maybe talk to. You probably have heard that James Hazlitt at the VA is a very popular person in the industry.
He is.
He is a great individual that I've known for a lot of years. I'd also encourage you to try to reach out to Chris Hunt. Chris and I worked together in the past. He does run an appraisal management company, but he is Sacramento, and a lot of respect for Chris. Chris helped me on my pathway to seeing the importance of family and maybe waking up some of those emotions of life on the journey. So, those are a couple of people I'd love to maybe hear, if they're interested to go from there. But I think you've did a good cross-section of folks so far.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I did see James at one of the Vegas conferences in the fall, and he said, yeah, it was just a matter of, he'll probably, right now I'd expect that he'll be part of season 2. So we're excited about that coming up in the next segment of the year. No, thanks for that recommendation. Would love to hear for you, if you kind of playing back a little bit. It's such a powerful theme of doing things with Dad. And you mentioned about Dad becoming a staff appraiser. Was that the first time you even thought about doing some other, and call it activity in the appraisal profession than being a fee appraiser?
Yes, because I didn't think it was going to be long-term. It's like everything else. It's kind of like the joke of Vegas or Reno here is no one expects to live here. You just kind of wake up and it grows on you. And again, Reno's great. We've got Tahoe. We've got everything. Vegas is Vegas. It's got a lot of positives and some other things as well. I'm a Northerner, so if from Northern Nevada, it's one of those things where I thought, well, as long as I could give my dad cover fire, be his wingman for a couple of years, I could kind of exit out and do something, but I never knew what I wanted to do. There were a lot of opportunities that were out there. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor, but strangely now I'm kind of drawn back.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking of doing the paramedic classes just for fun. I don't want to be a paramedic, but I learned and started those classes years ago. So I think it would be cool to kind of just brush up on that stuff and learn the things that I had touched base on when I was an undergrad. But I didn't really know of anything beyond a fee appraiser at that point. My dad was a staff appraiser when he went to work for Norwest Mortgage years and years ago. And that's back when a staff appraiser got a car and a salary and everything that was there. This was before the AMC world, because you were just a bank employee. And it wasn't, you got to see a lot more of the transaction than you do today with all the regulation and hyper-regulation we're under the magnifying glass with. But you looked at it, and appraiser was an appraiser, and you didn't think about that. And now when I think about it, it's like all the things I missed. Shouldn't I have been buying property since I was like 21 years old? Shouldn't I have been, looking at REITs and other things that were there? Boy, I wish I would have. And that would be another little nugget of wisdom that I'd give to someone. And I do tell that to appraisers that contact me as in my position as either on the appraisal commission or just people that know me. I say, why do you want to be an appraiser? It's a tough job with limited reward. Well, you guys make like $600 for an hour's worth of work. Really, we don't. But we could talk about all that.
Yep.
But I was like, what do you want to do? Assume you can become an appraiser. You just want to spit forms out for 30 years? Because if that's all you want to do, this isn't for you.
Yes.
Is it you want to be a property manager? You want to be an investor? You want to be a consultant? These are things you're appraising. You're filling out forms. Should be the side hustle to everything else that's out there. And I think a lot of people are finding that the hard way now in this slowdown.
Yes.
And with appraisal modernization is, oh my God, I set myself up as a form shop. My side hustle is actually working at Walmart now, instead of, oh, my side hustle went down, but I'm still an expert witness. I'm still a right-of-way appraiser. I still do, estate work, all these things that are there. And then I do, form. Yeah, the vast majority of forms that I do right now, and it's not the majority of my business, is for the VA.
Oh, okay.
I'm proud to be on the VA panel. I service several areas of Northern Nevada that very few appraisers do. I don't make hardly any money at it, when you consider the gas, the time and everything. But my dad was a soldier, is a decorated soldier, and I owe that back to the community of veterans. So as long as the VA panel will have me, I will do whatever I can to help support our veterans and active duty military. And if that's filling out forms, it's filling out forms. I can do that. But my side, my other things that I do is I am an expert witness. I do work for estates, private work, et cetera, et cetera. And my other thing that I do right now is drive a minivan. I pick up from school 2 days a week. I do sick calls. When lunches get forgot, I run back and forth. I run kids to the doctor, the dentist, all the things that are there. I do all the Mr. Mom stuff. And for those that, haven't done that stuff for a while, get your butt back in the Mr. Mom chair for a little bit, and you'll appreciate your significant other, because there's a lot of water to be carried.
There is a lot of water to be carried. I do not want to miss the opportunity just to acknowledge, I too have had the privilege of family members that have served in our military, and really just recognize and appreciate, one, the value of being on the VA panel, but your reason for it, and that it's not about the money, and it is about the contribution, it's about making a difference, and paying back in a way of saying thank you and paying that forward. Really acknowledge it.
And I also do a compliance inspection for the VA, which is with disabled veterans. They are eligible for grants to have ramps or walk-in showers or those things installed in their homes by the VA. And I actually go through that and do tiered just inspections to show the VA progress, and it releases funds, very much like a draw inspection on the appraisal. But again, does it pay a lot of money? No. But does it help a disabled veteran? And am I willing to, drive 150 miles to make sure that a generator was there? Literally, it's just I take a picture of a generator, get back in my car, and walk, and, send it in. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. And I'll do it until the day I die.
So you would share that because of Dad taking that staff position with North Mortgage, that kind of opened your eyes to it. And then you got involved. Did you ever jump into the role of staff appraiser, or because of your MBA, did you go right into managing that team, that first large team that you were involved in?
Yeah. So just to clarify one thing, my dad was a staff appraiser at Norwest during the 80s and early 90s. Then the EMC space happened with Norwest. And that's where he then became an independent contractor before they were doing staff. And then during that time, then he became a staff appraiser, which is now CoreLogic. So there was some interim time that's in there. But when my dad took the staff position, I thought it was really good because overall it was some people that I knew that managed the team. And I wasn't really thinking about it, but then the job was posted and I was like, oh, well, I could be a field appraiser and keep doing what I'm doing while my dad is a staff appraiser, kind of fruits of both worlds, right? Or I could, throw my hat in the ring. And it was interesting, the interview, I had just come back from vacation and I was sick and I didn't want to miss the interview because the guy had flown up from Kansas City. I went into the interview with 104 fever, and he's a friend of mine still. And afterwards, he told me after he hired me, he was like, you were either the most nervous guy in the world of how much you were sweating, which I didn't think you were, or there was something wrong with you. You were sick, not feeling well, whatever, but you showed up. It showed that you had the drive and interest in this position that I wanted to take a shot, on. At this point, I was a mid-20s-year-old something managing appraisers in some cases that have been appraisers for 25 to 30 years. So it was one of those things where I jumped into it. And again, it's just going to be for a year, right? Help Dad out, get him acclimated, make sure everybody takes care of him right, get him some cover fire. And then, a couple of years pass and it's like, ooh, there's a promotion that opened up. Now you could manage, this. And then you kind of just work your way through. And then again, much like living in Reno, you wake up one day and it kind of grows on you. And you're like, oh, and I know that some of your people right now are rolling their eyes probably on the podcast because there is an anti-AMC sentiment in the industry. But here's what I would say about any company, AMC, lender, whatever. There are good employees and bad employees at every company. There's good process and bad process at every company. There are people where you live, depending on what your skill set are, what your value add is, that make very good living at AMCs. We paid a ton of money when I ran the last AMC that we had in most major markets because it was a decision we made, but also it was the volume and needs that we had identifying the best of the best. And if you weren't the best of the best, in some instances, you may have not got that extra fee and that, those items that were there. But, I guess one of the compliments that I take, is I still see on the Facebook forums and other things is the AMC I worked with, they're like, it was a solid AMC till about 4 years ago, and then it kind of went to the crapper. That's when Chris and I left, and I was like, that's kind of a compliment, I guess. We left the people and started to have a negative opinion of it. But our teams, the people we worked with, our teams were still there, but it was culturally a lot had changed, and it's just a very different company. But long story short, what I would say is I think people should look at that, and you see that now when companies move away from an AMC and do direct lender business. I mean, I think United Wholesale Mortgage is a really good example. They worked for AMCs for a really long time. Everybody complained about their AMC. Oh, this is terrible, whatever. Then they announce they're going to direct appraiser. And everybody throws this part, right? Hey, no more AMCs, death to the AMCs, blah, 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 blah. And then they started to get involved with it, and they're like, well, some of the things are actually worse than with the AMC. I have to pay a 3% fee to Stripe, as an example, to get paid. I never had to pay 3% to an AMC to get paid. They don't get back to me as in timely of a way, or the fees are lower than what they were at an AMC, and et cetera. So it's one of those things where I don't think folks should really wholesale look at an industry and say good or bad. It's find the clients that you like working with and that you can have a good business relationship with. And if you don't like AMCs, then don't work with AMCs. If you like AMCs, work with AMCs. But the amount of shaming and just bad thoughts on Facebook and some of these forums about people that they don't understand the situation other people are in, it's shocking to me. And it's, even in my case, I responded on a couple of threads. Someone asked how to do a barn dominium. Oh, we happen to ask a couple barn dominiums here. So I put in some comments, and there's a lady who just attacked me because of not what I said about the barn dominium, but because I was the commissioner of the appraisers. What did you do? I'm an appraiser. This isn't an appraiser. I'm like, I'm a theater. I'm an appraiser doing fee work. Oh yeah, but you worked at an AMC and they're terrible AMC. And I'm like, we've never met. But out of this 10-second interaction, I already have we have this negative start card. You know nothing about me. I know nothing about you. But at the end of the day, I realize that a lot of appraisers are frustrated. I am frustrated as a fee appraiser with a variety of AMCs that I see. I am frustrated with a lot of the things that I see with appraisal modernization right now. There are a lot of things that are out there that I just look at and I go, how does this make sense to anyone? And luckily, my wife is not in the industry. She is a pharmacist, so she's as far away as appraisal as possible. And I would say, hey, honey, take a look at this for a minute. This announcement just came out. And it says in April, I don't have to go out to final inspections anymore. And they say right here, as long as your photos are metadated and what have you, you could be provided photos and essentially virtually do them. But I have to sign this form that said I physically inspected the property. And she goes, well, isn't it fine? Isn't it their form? And I said, you know what, honey, you're right. But if I get turned into the state by not the bank or the investor, but by a homeowner, and they say I didn't physically inspect it and then there was a defect or what have you, do we think that's a defense I can use? Is, well, I signed that I did something, but someone said, don't worry about it. I mean, what lawyer would let you do that or whatever? And then it's the same with MLS photos. And it's one of the most debated things in MLS photos. You have clients that say MLS photos are fine. And then you have the GSEs that come out and say MLS photos are fine. But their forms say you physically inspected from the street. And they're not going to turn you in, is my thoughts, the GSEs or the people who say it's okay. But there are other people that turn you in or sue you. And can you imagine being on a court stand and saying, hey, Michael, I notice on page 1 here, you signed that you physically inspected the property on 3/9. Can you tell me who you coordinated that with or who met you at the property or what? And you said, well, I didn't actually do it. Oh, I see. So what else didn't you do that you said you did? You'll be on the witness stand for an hour and they will be completely destroyed and discredited in front of the court. And you probably won't be doing any expert work. So it's tongue-in-cheek funny when you talk to someone outside of our industry and try to explain what's going on. And they're like, how is any of this normal? But I think all industries are like that. My wife tries to explain pharmacy to me. And I was like, why do you have to stand on that little shelf 2 feet taller? Is it just to make you feel taller than me? Or why does it take an hour to get me a Z-Pack? They're already in a box. Don't you just take the shelf and put a sticker on there? So in all industries, I think it's a matter, and And that's one of the things, and this kind of circles back to your question, when did I start thinking about other things outside of, being a staff appraiser? I wanted to see how everything fit together. And I think there's kind of a triangle that most appraisers should try to get in their career at some level. Work as an appraiser, work at a lender, and work at an appraisal management company or an appraisal desk. See all three sides of how it works, and you will be shocked, but you'll also be one of the few people who can piece together solutions because you understand the limitations and the demands on all three elements of the triangle. Now, if you want to throw out the appraisal desk and put a GSE or whatever, I don't care. The point of the matter, there's so many appraisers that have been an appraiser for so long. They make so many assumptions about the rest of the world that it's disturbing at some level. And it's one of those things where I just wish folks could see it in a different one.
Yes, completely agree. And I think that goes back to something you said a little earlier about developing the capacity to coexist with strange bedfellows. That's not a place most people get to experience at any point in their life, much less along their professional development. And as you touched on with bringing such a curiosity to, I know this is going on, but like, what about that? What's behind the curtain one level up? And then making that choice to go from managing appraisers to hopping over and getting into representing entities. That's what's that like for those that have never had the experience to, as you said, in one case, in one state, we're aligned. In the other state, I'm opposite you. That's a fascinating opportunity that you've had.
Yeah, I would say it's both frustrating and tremendously awesome at the same point. I mean, there was literally, I could remember a week where it was the same group of people, but we were in different states at different days, testifying on the opposite side of the coin. I'm literally like, I'm saying what he said on Monday in a different state, and he's now using my arguments to say, and it's just so odd. But at the end of the day, what happened at all? People came together to find a negotiated solution. And that's where I think many of us as individual solitary appraisers have failed. And you could say, well, that's easy to say. You had all these support and whatever. You're right. Appraisers are one of the loose links in the chain, as they have not had an entity nationally that has really advocated for their position. So now people are going, well, the AI does that, right? The AI does stuff for commercial appraisers, and they do some stuff for residential appraisers, but you talk to some members of the AI, especially on the residential side, do they feel that they are advocated on for nationally on their best interests? Maybe, maybe not. All right, so that goes beyond the AI. So now you start to break into, say, some of the other associations, National Association of Appraisers.
Great organization.
I'm a member of them. I actually think it's a pretty good organization. Have they been a national player yet to take that next step, or would it be more kind of a regional type thing? I don't think they've taken that step to be here. We're here to advocate for residential appraisers. So now you've got NAR, and NAR, as we know, advocates for residential appraisers, right?
Oh, wow. Gosh, it sounds fascinating. I would love to hear more about that. Well, how many millions of realtors do they have paying them, and supposedly they care about appraisers as long as it advances their interests? I digress.
So, surprisingly, though, there is a group, a committee, I served on it for a couple of years, the Residential Appraiser Group, that actually do a strong job, but you're pushing a massive boulder uphill.
And they have a very small, vocal voice, but very low in volume compared to the cacophony of sounds of all the other interests that exist. And I'm grateful for my peers that have served on. I've attended a number of those events. They're well served, but I wish they were a lot louder. I wish NAR allowed them to be louder.
Right. And then, but again, even if they were as loud as could be on microphones and other items, you're 1% of NAR, if that, against 99% who are working to close deals and are compensated on closing deals for the most part. So you look at that and you go, okay, that's probably not the ideal folks to put appraisers as first. Well, now the Association of Appraisers of Regulatory Officials, they must put appraisers first, right? Well, they do a lot for appraisers, but remember that they're tasked with representing the states and the regulatory programs to regulate appraisers. So can you advocate and regulate at the same time? It's a difficult position.
I don't know. I've never sat in those shoes.
Well, you have to be very clear what hat you're wearing, which is one thing I forgot to do before we started, is I'm not wearing any hats other than Tim the fee appraiser with this podcast.
Tim, you're literally not wearing a hat. I just want to acknowledge that. For those that can see him, although we're not on video here, if you could, he is not wearing a hat.
No hat at all, and I am not speaking for any entity, whether it be in the Appraisal Commission, whether it be for any memberships that I am a part of. I am Tim, Claire's dad. That's who I am. But so then the thing that, it kind of breaks down to is then the state organizations, right?
Yes.
And for a while, they were very strong. And some of them are still very strong. I just got notice 4 or 5 months ago that ours in Nevada, with our 32 members, dissolved.
Oh, interesting.
Nevada isn't the center of the world. I totally get that. But
some people it is.
Well, yeah. But at the end of the day, how many big, powerful states, California, New York, Texas, tons of appraisers, Florida, have active appraisal organizations. Some do. I know Florida does. Texas, I hear on and off. California, I don't hear so much of. Occasionally, I'll hear from the AI, especially because their northern chapter will come up over here sometimes. New York appraisers, and it's possible they have really good organizations. I just don't live there and don't hear and see those things. But so now you kind of break this down, and now you're at a regional level. Now is it kind of your roundtable lunch group of 30 appraisers is advocating locally for you against everyone else we just talked about? It's an interesting world that we live in, and appraisers, I think, have to find a way to find a spot to work together in a negotiated way. And a great example of that is appraisal modernization. I see online and talk to people that hate appraisal modernization. There are other people that like it. To me, the argument is being phased wrong. And let's just take a step back for a minute.
Sure, Tim.
Instead of thinking appraisal, which has, hey, we've designed a product that is going to do appraisals in different ways. Let's think about it from the medical world for a minute. If they came out with a pill tomorrow that said you can cure the common cold, and it was an over-the-counter pill, and it went out there, do you think doctors would be saying, don't buy that because all the money we're going to lose, or all the things, I'm a family practice. I make 62% of my thing for sniffles and runny noses and et cetera. No, they wouldn't. One, it would be terrible. But two, they find other ways to keep busy. They have the things. A lot of people that are arguing right now is, I don't want the appraisal modernization, is because, hey, I don't want to be replaced. I don't want to do this. To me, the big arguments that appraisers should be looking at in appraisal modernization is, where's the liability? Where is the commensurate fees for the services being provided and liability being provided? And then how do you make it all work, and how do you have responsibility? So let's walk through that for just a second. One, this has been unanswered and untested to my knowledge. If you rely on one of these inspectors, whether it's a realtor or untrained, unregulated person, and they make a mistake, are you liable as an appraiser? The general vibe in the appraiser community is yes. You incorporated the data and signed it. Okay, well, maybe we should be talking about how could we amend that through certification modification, scope of work modification that is very clear to say, if I rely on an app that draws a house, for example, and it's wrong, I as the appraiser will not be liable. Here's the problem. Before we get that passed or fixed, someone's going to want to know who is liable.
Oh, yes.
So now you've got the provider who maybe makes the app. They're saying, well, I'm not liable. It's the person who used it, right? And then you've got the person who is actually at the house, maybe measuring it, going, I don't know how the app works. I just pointed at the wall with the couple hours of training that I got, and it measures the house work. So this, to me, I think appraisers should be really focusing on this from a consumer protection standpoint and a protection of public trust. Where is the liability? So if you want to be in the business of providing property data or having an app or a company that monetizes an app, are you going to have skin in the game? And I think Craig Steinley, the head of the Appraisal Institute, recently came out with a comment on this, and it wasn't on the specific issue I have, but I think I have it right here from the AI stuff. It was, a lot of questions that say, this is about the Fannie announcement about where appraisals are not the default requirement any longer. This announcement does not raise concerns and questions about increasing collateral risk at a time of market volatility. Further, the change complicates appraiser recruitment and diversity efforts through the insertion of an unregulated contingent of property data collectors into the mortgage lending process. So everybody's saying it's faster and quicker, but now we're adding an unregulated component. So my question is at what point are we going to solve that gap of who's regulating the folks that are replacing potentially some of the work that appraisers could be doing? I think if you get that done, some of the objections to appraisal modernization go away.
A lot of good points, a lot of good questions, Tim. Definite certainty is the future will come and change will be a part of it.
Exactly right. And if your future is going to be filling forms, you're going to have to adapt to those works changing and the will of your clients changing. Because again, going back to that thing with the medical example that I used for a minute, if a pill came out to cure the common cold, doctors wouldn't say, don't buy it, don't buy it, don't buy it. But appraisers would say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Say, here's why we shouldn't be doing it. Here's the concerns we have, etc. And again, if the appraiser is going to be liable for that information, then the fee should be commensurate for that extra liability. So I think these are the questions. And again, this circles back. I take a long way around in some ways to a simple question. But when you look at how do you kind of work together with everybody in the industry, you got to go in with that mindset opposed to a mindset of, kill it, kill it, kill it, or otherwise there's just nowhere to go.
I think that's a great point. And one thing I think would be also interesting that kind of leads up to that and an experience you've had on an occasion. What are the skill sets and what is and you shared a little bit of this, what are the skill sets? And then what is the mindset that you have to bring to ascend to a role of a chief appraiser? Because, there aren't that many of those positions in our country, but there are a number of them. And as we've already heard from people at different stages of their career, different ages of life, those opportunities open up, but they don't really know what that is. Could you share a little insight from your own experience around that?
Absolutely. I would first say, and here's something I'll challenge you to do in future podcasts. Every chief appraiser that you have on the thing, ask them what they were hired to do as a chief appraiser.
Oh, that's good, Tim. I will do that.
Because there's no consistent definition. I think one of your, I don't know if it was Woody Fincham or one of the guys was a producing chief appraiser. He was out in the field.
Yes.
Others manage teams of reviewers. Others are strictly on the speaking circuit. They go in or talking head. They don't manage people. They don't manage production, et cetera, et cetera. What is it to be a chief appraiser? In my mind, a chief appraiser is the chief valuation officer of a company. You should be the person who is the main resource and point of contact for all valuation-related questions, escalations, et cetera. Now, does that mean you wake up at 2 a.m. to talk about ANSI standards with someone who doesn't understand it on a Friday night? No. But if you're going to manage teams of people, do they have the appropriate training? Do they have the appropriate understanding of why they're reaching out to people as a review or answering those questions? So to me, part of it is you're managing the quality of the products that you provide. Part of it, you're mentoring and being able to answer those internal questions from non-appraisers who are making business decisions like, hey, why can't an appraiser just kind of, send somebody else out and say they were there, but just sign the report? Or, hey, why can't an appraiser go 5 towns away for a comp to hit the value when that would just make everything really easier for the borrower? They're fine. I mean, why can't we tell the appraiser how much they need to make the deal work? And there are a lot more non-appraisers that work for appraisal desks, AMCs, lenders than there are appraisers. And then finally, understanding the regulatory structures of which you're under, whether it's from a state, federal, whatever perspective. So I think the skill sets that I found most beneficial were patience, curiosity, flexibility, and honestly, you need a sense of humor. You got to be able to make fun of yourself. You got to be able to have a team that can just laugh and enjoy, those things and go from there. I was a believer, and still to my last week working in an official capacity corporate world, was still out in the dirt. At least once a month, I went out and appraised a house, and I would take people with me that would want to go and do it. But I wanted to not lose that. So I talked to some of these chief appraisers, and I say, when's the last time you actually, the joke is put tape on a house, but anytime measured a house, period. or been in a house. Well, I haven't done an appraisal in 18 years. Okay. So how do you think you relate to an appraiser who's just so frustrated with your upload process or your underwriting process or your communication process when you yourself have a run through it? Get your butt off your chair, get out in the field, submit an appraisal through your own system and eat your own dog food. See what it's like. Because if you can't do it as the chief appraiser of that company, how do you expect people who work with tons of other clients to do it routinely and in the level of perfection that you're looking for? So not all companies will let you do that. I totally get that. But you need that technical expertise as well. And, you can have fun with it. At one point, I threatened to lock our chief technology officer in a crawl space. I mean, I had him down there. I totally had him down there. I mean, I could have left him for dead. It was a vacant house. No one found him for days. And I had his phone. It was the best part of it. It's one of those things. But if you can't, kind of just screw around with people at some level and enjoy each other's company. And again, take that step back. I wish I would have done this before because it would have helped me with a lot of employees that I had worked with and in concert with, understand those family values and other things that people are balancing of, hey, I realize you leave at 3:30 every day to pick up your kids. Do you have to? Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. And that, I've had other people, I had a gentleman who worked with me that was going through a divorce. He handled it more professionally than anyone I've ever seen him. And it was just, did the work. It never came up in turn. I said, if you ever want to talk about it, if you ever want to go through, anything, I'm always here to, talk about it, go whatever it is through there. Never brought it up. So it's one of those things where I think you've got to have that level of empathy to understand with folks. And, I failed in that in a good part of my career. And it's, people ask, am I interested in ever going back into corporate or lending or what have you, whether it's chief appraiser or other roles. And I don't think I would, with the exception of if I found a really good opportunity where I could mentor and talk about the things, that we talked about today and that I've learned. Then I would consider it, because I do think that there are a lot of things I would do different and a lot of things I've learned from, but also a lot of things I would push back a lot harder on.
Well, I appreciate that, Tim.
Challenge your other chief. Ask them what their first job was when they were hired on day one, what they thought the job was going to be, and ask them what they do now.
Yep. No, I had already written that down. I take notes when we go through this.
No, yep.
Yeah, we'll keep track of things. No, I appreciate that. One of the things we like to ask as we kind of move to wrap up is, what are you encouraged about or looking forward to as you look out across the next years as a full-time dad and part-time appraiser? And let's start on the appraiser side first, and then we can segue over to the full-time dad piece.
Sure. Something I'm encouraged about is I think that the newest people in the industry and those that are considering it are coming in because they really want to, opposed to many that came in just as a matter of convenience. So when you look at a lot of us and I can put myself in this thing, there's a big pile of money in certain markets that you looked at certain times in the history of the market where you said, man, I can make a lot of money if I go do this. I'm not going to particularly love it. My God, let's get in here and do this. Get this side hustle going here. So it becomes your full-time job. For what you have to do to be an appraiser right now, as hard as it is to be and knowing all the uncertainty, the people that put the time and energy to do it are, I think, going to be very passionate about it. And I think much more able to connect and work collectively nationally, opposed to the current crop of appraisers. And that is not meant to be critical on the current crop. I just think a lot of us are so ingrained in old ways that fresh blood and fresh perspective is needed. And you kind of see that in companies, even outside of appraisal, where they've always promoted from within. I think the appraisal industry is kind of like that at this point. And though some of those companies say, we got to bring some fresh blood to just shake things up, I think that's where the appraisal industry is right now, because it's hard to become an appraiser. I've joked with my wife that it was just as hard for her to get her pharmaceutical doctorate as it was for me time-wise. And plus, my teachers could whop me upside the head again.
You were at special teachers.
My only option was running behind mom at some point to hope dad wouldn't smack me again. But no, my dad was a very nice gentleman.
Unless you really picked the wrong cop.
Oh, exactly.
Good.
Well, yeah,
it was all over.
If we had to drive again 30 miles for a new cop, God forbid. But no, I do think that is a good positive. I think we have to be very thoughtful about how new people come in, that they are trained appropriately, But I also think that there is a lot of shakeup in the industry right now that will keep the best of the best in the industry. Some will go do other things, but then the backfill that starts to come in is going to be really impassioned people.
And as it relates to your 6, 5, and 3-year-old bosses?
Yeah, so we have T-ball season starting next week.
Don't you have 15 feet of snow?
It's raining right now. We're going to lose a lot of that snow, but I assume T-ball is going to be pushed back a week or two. I'm just thrilled we're not the Yankees. I despise the Yankees. We're the Mets, and that's fine. Everybody loves the Mets. We're the Mets. It's one of those things, right? My son and I coach it. They show the names of the teams. You submit 3 names. And my son, I read them to my son, and I go, so you're the names. You got to pick 3. And I say, first one is the Yankees. He looks at me and goes, hell no. And I'm like, oh, I raised that one right.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
But so we have T-ball, starting for my daughter as well. They're going to play on the same team.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which is really exciting because I didn't think she wanted to play last year. She didn't have an interest in this year. She said she wanted to play. So that's a lot of fun. And again, it's a lot of chasing butterflies, if you will, at the 5 and 6-year-old T-ball level. But then I also coach
so cute
3-year-old soccer. And if you want to see butterflies, that literally...
that's like bunch ball.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a lot of crying, bunch ball, but most of my plays are based on if I throw confetti up in the air or have a balloon, I can distract the other team enough that my guys can get around them and score a goal. So that's, springtime sports for us. I also ride horses with my children. They've all been in the saddle since they've been 3 years old. My youngest is 2 years old, so it'll be nice to be able to get back in the saddle and ride this summer again. We have not had a conducive winter to ride horses. So those are 2 things I'm really looking forward to this summer. Summer's always a tongue-in-cheek looking forward to thing because you realize the school doors are locked and you can't drop them off there. My 3-year-old goes full time. So it's one of those things where I'm like, they're home every day. That's 7 days a week for 4 months. Ooh. And so those are things that I have a lot of fun with and interest. My son and I also love Major League Baseball. So we have a new Major League Baseball season starting. So we're excited about that. And other than that, it's just kind of learning what's new next in the world of, 6-year-old girls, which Hannah Montana is making a comeback in our house, I guess. So we have that on loop right now. And I learn about Bluey. If you haven't watched Bluey as a cartoon, it's a tremendous cartoon from Australia.
I've heard this.
It will literally poke your eyes out. I was sick one day and couldn't find the remote. And it was on for 7 hours in my bed with my kid.
Oh, no.
I had not slept for 2 days after just because of the nightmare. They're little snippets. They're only 6 minutes long. And sometimes they say words, using the Queen's English or King's English or whatever you call it. And it's like when my 3-year-old comes in, she goes, stop squabbling. And I'm like, where did you hear squabbling? What, Mom and Dad, what? And yeah, so it's one of these things. So it's all an adventure. I don't know what, I had kids pretty late in my life, so I didn't know really what to expect. And there's not really a use pat manual for raising kids. So
oh my gosh, that's funny.
I just kind of punt and go with it every day. But at the end of the day, here's the thing that if you don't have kids or you're thinking about kids is no matter what, and I'm sure I'll get to an age when this changes, as mad as my kids might be when they go to bed, every morning they wake up and hug me and kiss me and say good morning. We start with a clean slate. And it's something I wish I could do just in life in general. I'm sure when I shoot one of their first boyfriends in the leg because I don't like him at age 12 or something, that's going to go out the window. But for now, I'm dad and I'm still doing okay. So, those are the fun things.
The single digits. You're in they're single digits or just those years. So, man, like I said, these are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, and so inspired to hear that you're prioritizing that. I'm sure that's going to resonate with some others. So, Tim, thank you for giving us just a little insight into both your life, a bit of your family, as well as your professional yellow brick road. Appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you having me on and, pulling me out from my cave after a couple of years to talk in public for a little bit. And I will be also interested in listening to your guests throughout the summer and catching up on additional podcasts. So keep up the great work. And I think it's a great opportunity to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit more in the appraisal industry. We should be as transparent as every other industry can be. We don't have anything to hide and shouldn't have anything to hide. As appraisers, everybody knows how we're trained. Everybody knows the standards and practices we need to abide by. and we should be able to be as open and transparent, and all the partners in the industry should be as well with us. So something I'm also hopeful for over the next couple of years, that we see that increased level of transparency and partnership in the industry.
Well, Tim, thank you very much. And again, we appreciate everybody joining us for another walk down the real estate valuation and appraisal yellow brick road. Sometimes you start in the profession. Sometimes Dad says, do not go there. Do we always listen to our parents? Well, we really appreciate Tim's input. And until our next session, as we're moving towards the close of our first season, thank you for joining us. Please continue to share it out. It's really wonderful and grateful to hear all the feedback and encouragement. It's like, wow, I never knew that about that individual. Heck, I never knew that individual. I may never know that individual, but it gives me some perspective for myself and the rest of my years in the profession, and maybe how I can contribute more or learn and grow. With that, I want to say thank you, and until our next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pa Roo Zings, Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing life paths and achievements of our guests. Don't forget to like us on LinkedIn and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Pa Roo Zings, Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.